Je m'appelle Lila Cashew et je
My name
suis
is Leila
directrice
Cashew, and I am the
exécutive
executive
de
director
l'Organisation d'OJ,
of
Environnement, Réseau pour la
the
recherche en santé autochtone du Québec.
Network on Research
Nous aimerions commencer
Indigenous
ce
Health for
webinaire
Quebec.
en
We're going to
remerciant
start
nos
this
panélistes
webinar
qui ont
by
accepté
thanking
de
our
partager
panelists who
avec
have
nous et
accepted
avec
to
vous
participate,
aujourd'hui
share
le
with us
travail de
today
recherche qu'ils
the
effectuent.
research
Nous
work that
tenons
they are doing.
également à remercier
We
toutes les
also would like
personnes
to
présentes
thank
dans
all the
l'auditoire
people
et qui
present
partagent notre intérêt
and
à
who
alimenter
share
les
our interest
discussions
in
sur les pratiques prometteuses
fostering
qui
discussions
favorisent les
around
environnements de
practices
recherche
that will
par et pour les premiers peuples.
help
Nous sommes actuellement
better research
à
environments for
Jojogé,
the First
territoire non
Peoples. We're
cédé
right now in
de
Jolicoacougé in the
Ganingahaga,
unceded
également
territory of
historiquement habité par la
Ganingahaga,
nation
and it
Anishinaabe.
was historically
Cependant,
inhabited by
comme
the
notre
Anishinaabe
public et
First
nos
Nation.
panélistes proviennent de plusieurs
Given that
endroits
our
du
panelists and
territoire
our
connu
participants come
aujourd'hui
from
sous le
many
nom de
different
Québec,
territories
nous vous invitons à
known
partager
today
dans
as
le chat
Quebec, we would invite
les
you to
peuples
share in the
autochtones qui
chat
ont façonné le
the
territoire sur lequel
First
vous vous
peoples
trouvez
that lived on the
aujourd'hui.
land where you
Et je
find
vais
yourselves
passer
today.
la parole à
I
ma
will
collègue Audrey.
pass it over to my colleague Audrey. Thank you very much, Leila. My name is Audrey Monette Deschênes. I'm a research and planning officer for ERRSA-Qc-NEIHR Quebec. We'd like to welcome you for the 9th and last webinar of the practices in Indigenous research. So it's the last one before well-merited summer break. So we last time we talked about research projects that were done by communities and Indigenous organizations, but we're also presenting research partnerships with between the universities and Indigenous communities, and that will be the case for the two presentations we have today. So we're really happy to welcome first the project Tininnimiutait, Health and Well-Being for Elders, Adults, and Youngs, and Nunavimmiut. I hope I'm saying it properly. So this presentation will be offered by Geneviève Vachon, who is a master's student, and she will be accompanied by Julia St-Aubin, who is a project coordinator, a research collaborator for the project. So I'm going to put their presentation up in a moment. Over to you. So I'm going to share my screen. So does that look okay? Everyone can see it? Great. So yes, we're going to take a bit of time, Julia and I, to introduce ourselves. So I'm Geneviève Vachon. I'm a student, a master's student in public health at Université Laval. I'm under Christopher Fletcher and Nathalie Lemire. I'm going to talk to you briefly about my background before getting to the master's. I'm trained in psychology and I did social work in Nunavik since 2010. I work mostly in protecting the area of youth protection and also as a manager. So I'm talking to you a little bit about it because it does affect the research that I'm presenting to you today. My experience and the questions, the research questions that I ask myself today really are rooted in my experience, my professional experience in Nunavik. Working for youth protection in the Indigenous context was not easy. And I just felt like we were in a very colonial system, not adapted at all to the realities of the Nunavimmiut residents. Despite our best intentions, despite that we really wanted to help, our interventions could sometimes, trigger traumatisms. So it made me felt very powerless and made me ask myself many questions. And what I wanted to do is really sort of take a step back and think about how to better act in the level of the population, how to better contribute to in a way that makes more sense for the people we're serving. It's like we didn't even have the same definition for the word family, and same thing for the definition of health and well-being. It's like sort of, what does it mean for the people we're trying to serve? And that's what brought me to the master's in health, in public health and promoting health. That's what we're doing. We're looking at health from the point of view of the populations that we're taking care of. that's how I got to the master's, and that's what made me decide to do research in Nunavik with the communities and working very closely with the people and focusing on subjects that were logical to interesting to them. So that now you can see how that might have tainted my role here. But I'm going to pass it over to Julia.
Yeah, I'll be talking in English. Just a little warning. If you guys want to switch to the interpretation. My name is Julia. I'm an Inuk from Swallowchuck. It's maybe easier. The English word for our community is George River, or in French, Georges Rivière. Yeah, I've always been interested in a sense of collecting data, but not really through science, but through personal experiences, like what we experience at home, like recording family, recording camping, or watching my dad take pictures of the landscape, the animals, taking videos. He had when I was growing up, he had a very old-fashioned VHS camera. So he collected family data, cultural data in that sense. I had the opportunity to work with two science studies, one with Geneviève with the Tininnimiutait, and the other one with Jose with called, their goal is doing many researches. So I had the opportunity to help coordinate that as well. I was the youth coordinator. My interest in science is to preserve our culture, but through the lens of Inuit, through the importance of preserving the knowledge of the elders, the knowledge that our parents has. Their experiences are very different than the elders. The elders were living a nomadic lifestyle, and now we're living a nomadic lifestyle. And through the consequences of colonization, we have lost our language, our cultural practices, and many of those things, but not all is lost. And I see the importance of collecting data, and that's where I am interested in this kind of science. I'm not a scientist, but I see the importance of Inuit working with scientists to preserve what we do have from the past, in the present, and for the future. So I'm glad to be having this opportunity.
Thank you, Julia. Donc,
so just to introduce the project, we'll start by presenting how the partnership was built for this specific project. Then Julia will share her experience as coordinator, research coordinator for on the project, but also inevitably we'll also touch upon the research in general in the Nunavik, because there's a lot of research that's being done up there. And there's a lot of different experiences, some good ones and some less good ones. And Julia has a lot of insight to share with you about that. And if there's still more time at the end, I would go into more detail on the project, the Tininnimiutait project. So Tininnimiutait, what does that mean? So there's the marine species. It's an Inuktitut word that means those that belong on the shore. There are species like mussels, algae, urchins, little fish that we can collect at the low tides, and in Nunavik all year in certain communities. As you can see in this picture, it's an area called Tessikalak, which isn't very far from George River, maybe an hour to 2 hours in snowmobile. It's a place that because of the current, it doesn't freeze. So you can get access to the low tide even in the winter. So we can collect the Tininnimiutait from there. There's another area called Tangisujuak, completely in the north of Nunavut, where we can also get Tininnimiutait under the ice. The Inuit people found a way to go under the ice in the winter to collect these species. The study came from following in 2017 a study or a survey asking the Inuit people what were your food preferences, and the Tininnimiutait were being eaten less and less, especially by the younger generation. And so we realized that there's a lot of research that was done on traditional foods, caribou, beluga, seal, but a lot less on the Tininnimiutait species, that are actually quite interesting, especially in a climate change context, where the animals are called to migrate, and there will be more changes in that regard. So it might be more difficult as the years go along. So the Tininnimiutait are easy to harvest all year at low tide, but and within walking distance of the communities. So most of the communities can go from the community to collect them. They're abundant, quite abundant. In the past, when Inuit people were more nomadic and they couldn't hunt to feed themselves, they could turn towards the Tininnimiutait for food, and it prevented famine in certain periods in the past. So that was the idea. So that was kind of the gap in the literature that we saw, that these were eaten less and less, the Tininnimiutait were eaten less and less. So we thought, let's go and see if it would be interesting for the Inuit people to have data on these species. And then with regard to the Inuit knowledge, we found a book written by an elder, Mitsiajuk Napaluk, who is a well-known elder who had wrote many even novels and also about these species, and she left left her mark, a lot of Inuit knowledge. And so we based on this, ourselves on this book, but given that the ecosystems are quite different from one community to the other, the knowings are different, as well as the species, the ways of harvesting, they're all different. So we wanted to have access to the knowledge, like local knowledge from each of the communities that we're visiting. Here we have two elders from Tangisujuak. As Julie was saying, they're the elders that are the ones that are the holders of knowledge presently. And as she was also saying, the knowledge is often transmitted by orally, through oral tradition, as Mitsiarjuk and other elders that wrote some books, but the documentation is important if we want to preserve the knowledge for future. So our project is interdisciplinary. It's gotten on 3 axes. There's the one that I'm responsible for with my team. It's that's the public health axis. Then there's the ecological axis, and it's students in oceanography who will look at the impact of the environmental parameters on these populations of these species. And then there's also the nutritional access. So people colleagues who will evaluate the innocuity of these species, but also their nutritional components. So we of course did this in partnership with the communities, and the way we developed this partnership was that sure that what was very helpful was that the lead team had some links in many different communities in Nunavut. Christopher works with the Inuits in Nunavut for more than 40 years. Mélanie, my co-director, has been there for 15 years. So it definitely helps because they're long-term collaborations. But since the idea of Tininnimiutait was not specifically a request from the communities or from the region, it was even more important to make sure that this was interesting and if it was pertinent before starting the project. and to find out sort of how the Inuit communities wanted to do it, how they would like to be, of use to them. So we did some first consultations informally, locally. We wanted to make sure that the communities were interested, and this was in 2021. It was pretty long because of the pandemic in particular, but we ended up managing to do it eventually. In 2022, we did regional consultations. It's often how we go about it in the team, where we have a project, whether it's a community that asks for it or we propose something, we'll go see the regional organizations that would be involved in our study or subject of study. And then one group, Anguviac, is an organization that manages all of it does all the wildlife management, everything that touches animals, environment, whether it be earthbound or sea. We also talked about the regional organization on social services that do a lot of research in traditional nutrition. They gave us our comments, and we had their approval to go ahead. Then in 2023, also what I wanted to say is that the Anguviac, we presented it to their General Assembly, where there's a representative from each community, and each of these communities raised their hand. They said, is this interesting to us? Do we want to be involved? Is it going to be a priority for us? And then based on the communities that were interested, we went to visit locally the local organizations that come out of Anguviac that look after the wildlife in their communities. And then we have also presented at that time the protocol, the approach, how we were going to go about it. It's an interdisciplinary project. So I was documenting the indigenous knowledge, and we developed our methods, our collecting methods together, rather than sort of having meetings in an office or discussion groups. We really tried to on site and also by observing and more in kind of questions and answers mode. So when we did the consultations, well, we're talking a lot about Kengisujujuak, which is the community that Julia is from. But we also worked with Inujuak by Hudson's Bay, Kangisuak, and Kangiasuk. So when we contacted or we went to see each community, they named told us what their concerns were and their priorities with respect to those species. What came out from that was that there was a loss of intergenerational transmission of knowledge. The young were less interested in everything that was all the traditional activities and country foods, and that worries the elders because for them it feels like there's a loss of transmission. They mentioned that they would like the project to encourage the intergenerational transmission of knowledge. We also talked a bit about the Ungava. They were mostly harvested by the women, and it was very important for their well-being. It was a way for them to get out of the house, just the women to go and harvest. And that was really interesting because it's like a preconceived idea we had. Well, we figured it'd probably mostly be women in the project, but when we got to Inukjuak, they're like, well, no, it's not the women, it's the men, because the harvesting methods are very different. On the side of Hudson's Bay, there's not really a tide, so the species are subtidal, so you need a boat to go get them, and the way to harvest them is very more physically demanding. They're not harvested with their bare hands, they use tools, so it's more the men that do that work. On the side of Hudson's Bay, which we wouldn't have known if we hadn't done our consultations, and we might not have gone to see Nunavimmiut if we hadn't done those consultations, because it's something that we had overlooked. They also mentioned the diversity of harvest methods and the species available versus the regional ecology. So we had to go and find communities in each of those ecological regions to make sure we had a fulsome portrait of what it would look like in the region. They also talked about the importance of the local knowledge, and also the sharing of knowledge between communities. So there's a desire to kind of pull out the unique knowledge of each community, but they're also very interested in the sharing of knowledge between communities, and they hope to see that our project might encourage that more. We also talked about the ownership of data. So oftentimes we'll collect data in Nunavik, we'll leave with it, we keep them in institutions. And then the more we go, the more the people want to be more self-sufficient and independent around research. So they said, well, we want this data as well so that we can access it and maybe use it. So that's something we decided to do. We set up an agreement with the ERRSA-Qc for the wildlife data. And we made sure that this agreement was also validated by our ethics committee at the university and also at the CRCH of Quebec. So the ERRSA will be, they will be the owners of their own data. So at the end of the project, we will have the data, but we will also give them to the ERRSA. And they will be responsible for the means of access with the local organizations and so on. So those are discussions that we had during our consultations. It's kind of like an additional additions that we made to our project after our discussions. And at the end of the discussions, we decided what the methodology would be together. We would do as many workshops on the land with discussions, storytelling with elders. That way we do a lot of participant or observations. Come and see us and we'll learn. You'll learn. And a bit like how the Inuit people learn as well and how they teach. They expect that the children will observe and learn on their own. So that's how we did it. We made sure this is also true in terms of the discussions that we had. These are some things that we would think about, you know, based on our experiences and so on. One of my preconceived ideas was that if I met elders at the same time as youth, that the youth would not speak out of respect for the elders. They would not express themselves in front of them, so that I wouldn't really get access to what the young people wanted to tell me. And ultimately, in the course of discussions, they said, no, the young people, even if you're alone with them, they might not talk to you. What they'll do is they'll show their interest and watch them, just make sure that your projects and your activities will create space for intergenerational transmission of knowledge and community contact between everybody. Don't do it in specific separate groups, do it with everybody together. So we modified our approach to go more in that direction. So that's my kind of perspective and how the partnership was developed and how we built the project. And then we put it in place. And I'm going to let Julia talk about it, to talk about how it went when we started to put forward the project and collect the data.
Do you want to open your mic, Julia?
Yes, that's a good idea. I wonder if I could see the previous slide.
Yeah, sure.
So I wrote some notes here in case I forget. So in terms of research, before I say anything about that, I would like to mention that when they were collecting data on Tininnimiutait in one of the trips between another community called Kutrak and my community, they were on an island, and our NOC, the Anglo-Arabic organization that Geneviève was mentioning, they had hired me to be a translator and interviewer for a filmer for a documentary that they were doing for belugas, because there's a quota on belugas that are imposed on Inuit. So they were making a documentary to fight for the rights of traditional practices with beluga hunting, rights of anyways, and they were doing research on Tininnimiutait, and one of the teams of Geneviève was there, so I was kind of introduced to Tininnimiutait at that time. So now I'm here, so it's kind of like a full circle. And I would like to say the importance of doing research up north is doing it in partnership with local and regional organizations, like the politics of Nunavik, land holding that takes care of the land, Angovarapik that takes care of the animals. It's important to do that as scientists and universities because it puts you in contact with people that you will be working with in the future that will also be benefiting your research, to have that ongoing discussion. So I'm really glad to be here. Geneviève has taught me what it looks like to produce documents, and a presentation like this, it's really fun, and a webinar like that I would have never been involved in. And coming from a small community, it's a big thing when you don't have access to that. So the perspective, thoughts, and reflections, research between Inuit and Southern scientists. There's two sides to that. There's the bad side and the good side. And I'll start with the not so good side. Inuit in Nunavik are used to seeing scientists and researchers from universities that come to ask us questions, that collect data from us, and then they leave and we never see the research. We don't see the data, we don't see the documents, so we cannot benefit from them and from us. So it kind of, from that experience, it's kind of sour in the mouth, like to have that and not have benefited from it as well from the experience. It feels like you're being taken advantage of. And when doing research in our region, it would be good to teach us about science, because we only have high school in our region, and to include us in the educational process, the practices would be a great introduction to people that would maybe like to pursue science in post-secondary. And the good side that I've observed is when Western science meets traditional knowledge, and it's used in a way that's in collaboration, it can produce very powerful impacts for the communities and the organizations. Sorry, I'm really nervous. When I was talking with Geneviève, it was like going well, but now that I'm here, it's like, oh my gosh.
You're doing great. It's going very well, actually.
Why? The good part, the benefits of Southern scientists coming to our villages is when it's done in partnership, from the beginning, the process, and the final results, it's very beneficial for the scientists, but also for our communities, because we can use this information for many things: self-determination, self-governance. We can make decisions for that animals, like making hunting rules, or we can make political decisions based on the scientific data that was collected. So it benefits both parties. And during the process of doing the science project, when you're in our villages doing the excursions, doing the interviews, it's important to include many age categories: the youth, the teenagers, the adults and the elders, so that all age groups can also benefit from this. It can also be a good source of income for the communities. The majority of our population is on welfare. There's not many job opportunities. Like as for me, I want to be a filmmaker, but there's starting to be opportunities. Filmmakers are coming into the villages, but not so much as the South. So it's important to also consider what is lacking in Nunavik. What kind of extracurricular activities would benefit this research and also the community? You could do filming, you could do podcasts, you could do science experiments, you could do photography. That would be also a source of giving the opportunity to the Inuit in the communities to collect data on that side, because Inuit are more hands-on, like Indigenous people in general are more hands-on. And that will be a great advancement in science and also our communities. So it's important to have guides. Do I continue?
Sure, Julia, continue.
All right. So I was the coordinator, the community liaison coordinator for the excursion we did to Tasikalak with many age groups. When we went to do science, in Inuktitut, it's called Sukuyenik science. And as a coordinator, it's important to have a coordinator because you need someone from the community that knows the realities of living there, that speaks the language, that speaks English, even better if they speak French as well, but it's not necessary. I know we're in Quebec, but when you go to Nunavik, the language in general is English. So you're in Quebec, but it's a different reality here. So English, please. So the guide will help you to get guides to get participants like the youth or other age category of participants that you would like to have. They will know how many skidoos that you will need, how many sleds, as you can see in the picture. A sled and a skidoo can carry so much weight and mass, depending on the equipment. One person in winter has much more equipment than that person would have during a summer excursion. So it's a lot of things to put into consideration, even to wash your face, to wash your hands, brush your teeth, drink some water. You need a pot for that, a big pot. To melt the snow. So we learned from that experience. I was new as a coordinator, so we didn't have a pot to melt the snow, so we had to rely on the guides in another cabin for the water, which is like basic stuff, but sometimes it's something you miss if you don't know the realities of camping. And for me, I was new and not an expert in camping, so it was a learning experience that I really appreciate. Having a role like this, you learn a lot, and coming to the communities, you learn a lot. And being a guide, you get to learn a lot too, and being as a participant. So it's all a learning process, not just in science, but in life, in basic necessities, and adapting to your environment. The environment is very different. You travel by skidoo or boat for a few hours, sometimes many hours, and you're in the wilderness, and it's not the same. Like I'm in Montreal right now, and it's completely a different reality than the reality of up north. So the culture is different, the way of thinking is different, the way of communicating is different. Families communicate differently. Families are different towards each other. So it's important to be open-minded and to take the time to really live in the moment with us, and not be so professional. Yeah. And also aim for the long-term collaborations as opposed to short-term collaborations. That will be a relationship that is most appreciated, done correctly. Like, yeah. And I would say Tininnimiutait and Imaliri has done that very well, because it's a long-term collaboration as opposed to a short-term one. A short-term one is a one-sided relationship. And in a relationship, it's constant work, and in science, in our communities, it's a relationship that needs to, you have to rekindle it. You got to put fire in the wood, and both parties will put fire in the wood to make sure like everybody is staying warm. And so science and traditional knowledge can be a very good thing if the fire is kept going. So sharing knowledge on both sides is very important. For example, there was one participant in Dasikal, like the excursion that we did. He is from somewhere, Venezuela, or I don't remember, like somewhere hot, and they take lizards and they dissect them, take the eggs, and then sew them back on, and like that animal is free to go, but you have the eggs. So it's a completely different reality when you get to experience different cultures as well. Like it's a real exchange of knowledge, and it's something that stays in our minds for a long time. And like even Elders has Facebook, so you can stay in touch with Elders through Facebook, which is pretty cool. And moving forward, like the bottom left picture, that's my sister, and that's before we went on the excursion to Dasikal. And I was really stressed at that time because we had a shortage of, we needed a few more guides and a skidoo. So I was stressed inside, but on the outside, I was relaxed. And it was very important. I would like to use my sister as an example, and my little niece over there. That family is very important. Like we're very close in our communities. Like it's a small community, and you don't really have access to the outside world. There's not much people, so you're close to family. And my sister was there as support, and my niece too. She's so cute that you know, if you have anxiety, just look at her and it's gone. So I'm getting sidetracked, so I'll look at my notes.
But maybe we can, Audrey, I think we are out of time. Are we out of time now? Yeah. So maybe we can do the take-home messages, Julia, and leave the room to Jo Anni and Tanu.
I would like to mention, we're gonna be getting mining in near our community, a few kilometers from our community. They're very interested in doing a mining, and there's going to be a documentary that will be out by the end of the summer. It's going to be on YouTube. It's called Rare Earth. It will also be on the NMEF.ca. It's a Nunavik Mineral Exploration Fund, a nonprofit in Nunavik. And it is a very scary thing that we have to look forward to. And it will affect us, our animals, the land in a very drastic, permanent way. So when I'm talking about science, talking about the benefits that data will have for our future, we will be able to say, this was the purity that we had, this was the natural beauty of the land, and now we have this. And it is a very scary thing that we are talking about. So it's kind of like calling out all scientists, help us, help. So I would like for you, I invite you to listen to this song. She is Inuk from Nunavut that unfortunately killed herself. She was an advocate, and this song is saying, so she's saying, think of our ancestors, our future. Vote no, you are selling our land. The land keeps us alive. It has been ours for centuries. I don't understand why this is happening. What would our ancestors do? Fight for our people. And that's the translation, because some of it is going to be in Inuktitut, so that's the translation. I really appreciate science. I also appreciate traditional knowledge, and those two together, when done correctly, can make a huge impact on both sides.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you for both of you for this presentation. It was really a great example of how to properly conduct research in Indigenous context. And when research questions arise from communities and mobilize youth, elders, and community as a whole, it produces knowledge that is relevant for the future generations, for the generations of today, but also for the generations to come. So thank you so much for this presentation.
Could I mention one more thing, if that's okay?
Maybe at the end of the presentation, is that okay? I want to give some time for our other panelists.
Yes, I'm excited to hear from you guys.
So I will now, je vais donner le plancher. Donc le prochain.
So the next presentation is to work in partnership to promote partnerships in Indigenous contexts. We have Jo Anni Joncas with us, who is a professor at the University of Sherbrooke. And we also have someone from the, apologies, the interpreter missed that one part. I'm going to pass it to our two colleagues to start this conversation. Who will start? Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be with you this afternoon.
Thank you again, Julia, and Geneviève, for your presentation. I really enjoyed the presentation earlier, and I don't know what more to add, but I think we could certainly share some of our experiences that we have gone through in terms of research and data collection from an Indigenous perspective, working with First Nations communities and Inuit communities and villages. So that would be kind of our goal over the next 20 minutes or so. You want to add anything, Jo Anni?
Julia, I'd love to see, I would love to have the link for the song, because I'm on it and I'm not able to get to it, but I would really love to have the link maybe in the chat, if you could put the link for the song. Thank you so much for this invitation. I would like to say that I'm on the Université de Sherbrooke main campus, which is on the ancestral ancestral land of the Wabanakis. We decided today, Tanu and I, to have more of a discussion conversation and to answer questions that were asked by email. So we can just kind of give a bit of background on what the project is. Yeah, sure. You mentioned earlier, as you mentioned, I work in the Adult Education School Board for First Nations. We are established with 4 regional centers in 4 First Nations communities, with the service kiosks or pavilions that connect with 7 other communities. So on site. We have schools for professional training for adult education in the communities, in 11 communities, and also in 3 urban centers such as Val-d'Or, Montreal, and Laval. Our centers, well, we work in the context. We work with many different, with the Inuits and the Mohawks, the Atikamekw and the Algonquins and the Mi'kmaq. We also have language challenges. We work in the 2 languages, English and French. And we promote the use of traditional languages as well, Indigenous languages in the school setting, because we want to make sure that our learners can live fully within their culture and their language. So the goal of our project was to show the school boards, the Quebec school boards, how to establish partnerships with Indigenous communities to delocalize study programs so they are more accessible to the communities. There are many issues around the adult, especially in adult education. Many of our learners are established in their communities, and many of our adults are already have families, they have children. And to delocalize, so to go and do study programs, whether it be in Laval or Val-d'Or or Sept-Îles or Montreal or Quebec, you know, I am naming all the bigger cities, learners to leave, to travel, and it's an obstacle for us. So our school board over the past few years, it's been 10 years since we've been around, and we've developed many different partnerships with school boards to delocalize the study plans, the study programs. We want to share our best practices to create awareness within these school boards for how to develop partnerships so that they can succeed on behalf of our learners. That's kind of the overview of our project, but it really requires, you know, commitment and commitments from the communities and a buy-in from those communities on our project. We were talking earlier about, you know, gathering of data and such. Many communities, as we mentioned earlier, First Nations and Inuit, you know, they don't have the research models have existed for a long time, and there are definitely some taboos in certain communities who are fed up with being researched. You know, it depends on, you know, where is this research coming from and what's it gonna give us or what's it gonna do. So what we want to kind of explain the context, give a good explanation of the context of our research so that it can eliminate the issues, the taboo issues around, you know, from their previous negative experiences with research in the past. Also, what's important is, as is intellectual property, that it should belong to the communities. This becomes an issue, a very important issue, that we share our knowledge, our knowings, that the intellectual property stays with the nation and with the community, and even in terms of individuals, that they be recognized, you know, through this sharing. So these are practices that we have to ensure are in place, and now we explain it well to the communities. The first steps that I'm sharing, those are the links with the ties with the communities, to have a good connection with the community, to explain to give a good explanation for the projects that you want to put in place, and to ensure that you that you have their support to be able to put it in place. Otherwise, we wouldn't do this project. So the project that we're working on, we're working with a lot of different communities, and these are the first steps that we put in place, our meetings with the communities. So I'm going to let you speak a little bit, Jo Anni. So maybe just so that we can go right into the how for the project, how the project kind of got started. I saw a message in the chat. So discussions with Tanu that kind of brought forward this need for research to document the good practices and partnerships that were in place, and also to train the professional training centers, because it felt like we didn't have a good understanding of the realities and needs of the community. So that's where we developed the research project, and we went to get we obtained a grant from the provincial government. And the project is still evolving. It's a 3-year project, and we're working with partners, communities, the regional adult education centers. And each step, the project has evolved, and it's been modified many times to adjust to the needs and the context. And in terms of like decision making, to have monthly meetings. So that we take the decisions together to respond to needs. So that's kind of how the project came together. You also asked us the question, what are the challenges that you had, and how did you overcome those challenges? Tanu talked about one of them. You can come back to it, Tanu, if you like. We prepared ahead of time, eh? So here you go. So like this whole notion of over-solicitation for research projects, and it's kind of the colonial experience of research, which is really a kind of like extraction of information. So that's an issue that we really needed to consider. Communication is very important. Some had already experienced this, but as a university researcher, I have to respond to many needs, and have frameworks to follow to stay within. So that's what I've been kind of swimming in for several years, to work with the expectations of my peers, or what the needs. If the ministry is funding this, then so they have certain requirements. So it's how do we navigate through all of that, and how do we go forward despite that? It's not that big of an issue, but it is. It's good communication, monthly meetings, and just transparency. That's what I feel like. Did you want to add anything about the issues, Tanu? I think that when we talk about the involvement, when we talk about research projects, and we want to kind of engage with the community, and we need the community buy-in for that to work well. And if possible, as much as possible, if there are resources that you need to be able to put a research project in place, to go and get those resources, the local ones, as much as possible. As what Julia was mentioning earlier about, to work with like the people on site who know the community's issues, who know the people. The communities are small, everybody knows each other. So that's why I encourage using local resources and local people, to get the project going. And communication is so key. If we don't communicate well, we don't have regular meetings, monthly meetings to ensure that follow up on the project, well, we wouldn't have a good understanding of where we're at, and how we can support each other for the next steps of the project. So that's also an approach that we kind of use, that we prefer around communications, like very direct communications, and also to be on site. So we're working with students, right? So we're working with like a student from the university who helps us with research. And when we work in terms of projects that are involved Indigenous communities, whether it be the universities or CEGEPs or whatever, we also want to encourage that we give offer that some of the positions, research positions, be open to the to Indigenous students and local students, local people as much as possible. So in our case, we were lucky to have a researcher who is completing her master's, who comes from Maastricht, and she's supporting us in our work. The word that we use often in terms of the committees, it's kind of like a vigilance community, or like a director, like a guiding, like it's like a vigilance committee that makes sure that all the perspectives are considered in the project. And then when there's a need there, that we have links, direct links with the communities as well. Does it finish at 1 p.m.? No, it finishes at 1:30 p.m. just to make sure that people have a chance to talk a little bit and stuff. So coming back to our question list, so the successes and sort of the outcomes, the perceived outcomes. Well, the project's not finished yet. They're kind of into its last phase, last part. And one of the outcomes of this project is this training that we developed based on the data that we developed with the school board, and that we offer in professional development centers, so we can have a better understanding of the realities of the communities. And we feel like the training is very successful. But the first training we're offering it is coming Friday, because we just launched it. So we promoted it in many different events, at the Congress for adult education, and also on the Anglophone side. We also have different professionals training centers that are interested in this training, the Ministry of Education, and then the Federation of these educational services. And I know it was clear that there's a real need, and I wouldn't, from my own perspective, I would not have seen it. It's really because of my meetings with Tanu and my discussions with Tanu. He felt it was in his day-to-day experience. So together, the research and kind of backs up what we're the evidence of this need. And I feel like it's going to benefit the ministry and the various, the whole, to help the various players understand this process better. And ultimately, from my point of view, I think it's going to help with, self-sufficiency and self-governance of the communities, because we feel like it works well in the communities to delocalize the programs, and if the services are there, then the regional adult education centers can take advantage of this. So that's kind of what I feel like the successes and the outcomes, the positive outcomes are. And Tanu, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that? I think one of the challenges that we have is that we're at the mercy of this proving that we can put these kinds of programs in place. So it's as though the education ministry has asked us to do research to confirm that this works well. So like this, it's like they say, yeah, we're encouraging you to do this research to prove your hypothesis. So and then to share after that, to share that with the other school boards on how to put it into place. you know, in the past, you know, there were communities that had real needs to bring study programs directly in their communities. Now, and our approach is such that we say that education should be free. We always want to make sure that education, find a way to, you know, finance education, whether it be, you know, through provincial or federal funds. But in certain practices in the past, the school boards, through their, you know, business services, and most of these offices have, like, you know, business services offices, and they're in like in a mode of like selling their program to organizations for a specific objective. Like, for example, there's a community X that says, I would like the carpentry program in our place, in our community. The school board will come with a proposal for the community, and we'll try to sell it to the community for millions of dollars. And for us, well, that's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to sell, you know, a study program. We're trying to find partnership solutions so that the program can be paid for and delocalized into the communities, because there are examples that already exist. So that's kind of like getting away from this mentality of the school boards, that Indigenous communities they're not businesses. We're part of society. We're not CN Rail, we're not Videotron, we're not Bell, we're not Hydro-Quebec. Those are businesses where you can sell your products. A study, we don't sell a study program to a community. So our project is kind of comes up from that, that to try and get away from that mentality of selling, you know, programs, and also to delocalize them and find ways to pay for that program as well, to make it accessible. So that's like kind of one of the challenges that we have to try to overcome with the ministry. But now you can see how it ended up with us. The ministry approached us. They said, hey, you know, maybe there's a way, you know, first just to kind of to prove us that, you know, like to kind of confirm that your approach is useful or valid, and then next we'll look at the next steps and, you know, finding ways to make this accessible. So we're working within the means that that we have with that approach, like to promoting the promotion of our program is starting to make waves, and especially now that we're setting up many partnerships in terms of with different study programs locally. It's starting to you know, kind of block. It's starting to flow better. I'll stop there. I feel like it's going to make even more waves than already. You know, each new professional development center gets involved, it will be gain more momentum. Maybe in terms of the research project, well, it wasn't really developed as like research. It was kind of to respond to a need, but there was the collective data, you know, for the master student, as we mentioned earlier. She's doing sharing circles with the students. At the beginning of our project, we met with professionals in communities and people that are in professional training to kind of document their point of view, and we analyzed all that, gathered that data, and based on that, because of that, we developed this approach. So it's based on people's experience and personal experience. So, and from a research perspective in the project, it was in the budget that we had proposed at the start, which had a grant for an Indigenous student to do the project. So this research element is very interesting. And of course, there will be some publications by the student that will follow, but the group is really, you know, it's the training that is being made available. Maybe I can share and to show you the logos and the team for the project. Can you see? There we go. So this is the logo that we made. a graphic artist that did that for us. You've got the research team, and you've got the different steps in the project. Between 4 and 5, so we're confirming, and then we're going to share it, and that's about it. I just wanted to show you our team and our coordination committee and our cool logo as well. So if you see this logo, you might. So if you see, if you are in contact with school boards or with other educational centers, don't hesitate to mention that you heard about our work and suggest that they take a look at it. I don't know if I have nothing to add, but if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them. We didn't get to ask too many questions between the two presentations, so I'm happy to do that. But if you have a link that you want to share, let us know, because we'll be happy to share it on our social media. For the training itself, yes, yeah. For training, it's really important part of our network. So, Audrey, I got your email yesterday about the report. I was looking at the recommendations, and it's really interesting because it's very coherent with regard to the partnerships and professional development. I'm sure we don't have the same sources, but we still kind of come to have the same outcomes or solutions. I think it's more. This is what people mentioned at the event, and we prepared the report based on what people were saying. We worked with Jesse, so we were already well aware of your project. So I'm happy to see it. I see where see how it's evolving and everything. She's one of the trainers in our training. There's always got to be, we also want to make sure that there's an Indigenous and a non-Indigenous trainer, because we're talking about partnerships between an Indigenous and non-Indigenous organizations. So it's really important to us, to make sure that was represented with our trainers. I found it was really cool to see how it's evolving. So I'm gonna. So we're less numerous than earlier, but I'd like to open the questions and answers period. Julia, did you want to add what you wanted to say earlier?
I don't know if
Julia,
to share with us now what you wanted to share before.
Thank you. That was really interesting. We have something similar up north. So it's always interesting to hear what kind of similarities we have amongst us, like the Indigenous people. I wanted to use the example of a bee. A bee makes 1 teaspoon of honey in its lifetime. And I wanted to use that reference because in our communities, in our land, we have lots of honey. And we're willing to share honey, but don't take all our honey. And I wanted to use that reference because in that song that you may listen to, she's using that as a reference. I think I had a better way of explaining that, but in the moment, that's how it came out. So I'm sorry about that. Sujo, I also wanted to mention that if scientists would like to come to our communities, I was saying we need scientists to come help us. But now that I'm thinking about it, I was like, calling all scientists. And my thought now is we're going to be trampled by an abundant amount of scientists. Like there's going to be so much scientists coming into our village. So that's kind of like, oh boy, what did I just do? But like the approach of scientists is this. It is in collaboration with the community, but we do have an organization, regional organization, Makifig. They have a department called Atanniuvik, ATANNIUVIK.ca. It's maybe Geneviève can explain a little bit more about that. But once you do contact that organization, that department, then you work in our communities. You contact the mayor and the landholding, the Anguvirapik, depending on your project. So that's the appropriate way of doing it, because we are, like we were saying, bombarded with scientists that have not the best approach historically, but today is today, and moving forward, that is the best way.
Mhm.
And
I've put it in the chat, Julia, the
okay.
site of Akanuvi.
For scientists, I would also like to mention that our elders are diminishing. Then our elders now that are alive were nomadic, but they're gone. We don't have them anymore. The people that live in our communities, they were not nomadic. My parents, not nomadic. We are sedentary. So it's like the time is ticking. The knowledge is there, but the time is ticking. And that's a scary factor concerning our culture and our knowledge keepers, because they are our libraries. That's why science is so important, to be the data collectors, to really ask the community, what approach would you like? We're probably gonna say interviews, video, audio, transcribing, and making those accessible to us. And that is very good with education too, like using that material for our own education system. Yeah, I wanted to mention that. And I thought about that because you guys are talking about education, and it's something to look forward to. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. So are there any questions? Est-ce qu'il y a des questions, des commentaires?
Are there any questions or comments? Oui, allez-y, Maria. We go ahead, Maria. Yes, thank you to the panelists for sharing their stories and their experience, their research experience in the Indigenous context. As a researcher and student, it's really great to hear other experiences from and other teams. It's very motivating because there aren't very many examples, at least in my area. Well, I had a question for Jo Anni and Tanu concerning your training. We talk a lot about training the professionals, and whether it be in health or the students and professors. We talk about cultural security, but the choice of the mode of the training, is it in person, online, capsules? What motivated your choices? So the training really is for people, and not just for the people who work in the professional training centers, and then for the teachers and for the staff, support staff. They're there, they're supporting success. So given that we wanted this training to reach as many people as possible, and we wanted it to be free, we opted for the online 2-3 hour blocks, but also with the possibility of doing it on site. So if someone would like to have it in person, we can do that, but we don't have the budget to send somebody over there. so that the training center needs to cover the cost of travel for the person. So it does kind of come back to finance, to funding. The funding is limited, but that said, that training will continue to live on even after this project is complete. So the school board will continue to offer it, and there is a way to offer it in person at a center for professional training. What I would like very much one day would be to have maybe training online, but that would require a much bigger budget to, to do that. We can do online training, but there's different levels of quality that are possible depending on the money that you have.
Did you still have a question, Leila, or Julia answered all your questions?
I can ask a question. I had one for Julia and Geneviève. I really enjoyed the presentation, and I think it was when Geneviève was talking, you were talking about how elders wanted to encourage transmission to youth, but maybe it wasn't, it wasn't in the presentation. I was wondering though, how, like, if there's anything being put in place at the same time with your research project, if there's some initiatives by some of the Inuit who are there, who are working on the project, or anyway, I just wanted to hear about that, if you had.
Yeah, okay.
That or something else too, if there's other. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, in the research, like the methods, like that we used methods that could foster intergenerational transmission, but that's true that we didn't touch about what we are planning to do as tools afterwards to give back the results to the communities. And as Julia mentioned, there's a book that is planned where we will have excerpts of interviews from elders that we want to do in collaboration with KI, which is the school board in Nunavik. And we want that booklet to be used in and we'll do that with the teachers as well. So it's going to be a co-production so that they can have a book that they can use in science classes, cultural classes about Tininnimiutait with the words of the elders. And we also, all the beautiful picture that you saw were taken by Jean-Philippe Brochu. Jean-Philippe Brochu from Ubik Film, and he does a lot of projects in the north. And we also have footage. So he came with us and we have footage, and we want to do short capsule, sorry, I don't have the word in English, but short capsule, educational capsule that we could also project in the classrooms and with elders, with the voice of the elders. So you keep a visual and you keep, the voice of the elders and the image of the elders. In terms of event, we actually, we didn't think about anything yet specifically for a transmission of intergenerational transmission. One thing that we will do, and that was kind of asked by the partners, is when we give back the result to have a radio show. Like the community radio is very, very important in the communities in Nunavik. It takes it's, well, Julia, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the way to communicate with people. And elders do share a lot, like on open lines on that radio, and we want to use that medium to have elders, well, to give back our results, but to have elders call in and start storytelling to like to give the result back and to have it accessible to the whole community. So these are the initiatives. Intergenerational transmission is important in research, but is important everywhere. There's a youth organization called Hartwit, and they do like days with elders and youth where the goal is to gather together. So there are a lot of initiatives in Nunavik to foster that, and we try to include it in research as well. Does that answer well?
Yeah, it does. And,
okay.
and I know we're almost at time, but it's kind of a follow-up is, are there any Inuit students working on the project too? Because Julia talked about some of the liaison, the coordinators, but I didn't hear about the students. I don't know if I missed it.
That's the thing though, and I know Guy has a question. Like, I'm super poor to manage time, so like interrupt me if you need. But that's a very good question that you asked, because youth are, and Julia can add also, youth are usually hard to reach out to, I would say. And even in Imaliritan, when it's a youth camp, Julia, and they are hard to recruit, I would say.
With youth, you have to make it very attractive, and you have to put a lot of money into it. If you want to be involved, it needs to be, the activity needs to be attractive. Like, you can do video editing, cooking, anything interesting that they may be interested in. So be ready to put money into it. Are usually very difficult to get involved. In terms of using the FM, the FM is basically the Facebook for the whole community. It's like you can wish people happy birthday, politics, go on the radio during lunchtime to inform the community of what's going on and whatnot. Like, people ask for the transportation bus to go to House 101 or whatever. So that's a good way to communicate with the community. I agree.
Yeah, and the thing, like Julia was a coordinator, and in each community we had a local coordinator, but they are not usually student. They are more like professional, I would say, and that we hire. We hire guides, but they're usually like 20s, 30s, and not necessarily youths, but they are always invited. And the thing that is good also is to do partnership with teachers in the school. So if we do partnership, we can reach out to the youth through the school, and that's good. But we need, as Julia said, we need to go on the land. It needs to be an activity with them for them to get involved. They are really interested in technology. So when we had that cameraman, like, they are very interested to that. There's one of my colleagues who does collect data with drones. They are very interested into that. So that's a very good way to get youth involved.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Oui, bah, il y avait Guy. Vas-y. Guy.
Oui, ben, merci beaucoup.
So thank you very much. I already asked my question in the chat. It was a question for Tanu and Jo Anni to know if it's just the feasibility of the delocalization, or is it actually a target, for like areas of training that are priorities. The other question I had was about why is it that often studies are coming from universities instead of when they should actually really be coming from the communities based on their needs? They should send the list of needs towards the universities. And that's my personal opinion. I'm just wondering for that first question to Tanu or Jo Anni. Thanks. We take note of your point. Thank you. It's all the programs, study programs that we can delocalize to the communities. There's lots of needs already in the communities. Could be like a cooking cohort, or ecotourism, or carpentry, or heavy machine. We could name them all. It would be all these areas of study. Thank you. So I think, so the training centers that approach us often it's specific programs because they have a partnership with the community, whether it be horticulture, carpentry, there's, cooking, all the different stuff. I know that Marie-Émilie had a question, a quick little question. It's not a question, it's just a comment, quick comment. The training, for the training. It's, I like that it's, since our elders are passing away, it'd be really interesting to have elders that were speaking in the training, not just, bringing their ideas and thoughts back, but it's good to see them because the Quebecois people, they don't really know the elders and they don't really know what an elder is. Pretty much to the Quebecers, anybody could be an elder. Yeah. I'd like to thank you all for being with us today. I'm starting to lose my voice. This is the last before the the celebration. Yeah, this is the break for the festivals. Yes, or I mean the break for summer actually. And I'd like to wish you all a great summer to rest up and have a good time with your close